Happy Tuesday, fantasy friends. Let's get into this Week 8 waiver wire. To start off the episode, there are a few highly owned running backs that we didn't cover last week, but have in previous weeks that are worth briefly mentioning again. A couple of those are Jamal Williams and Chase Edmonds, two backup running backs on great offenses with their team's RB1s out. Now, they shouldn't be available, but if they are, go grab them. Same goes for Gio Bernard and Boston Scott. Coming up next on our running backs is Carlos Hyde. Chris Carson has been diagnosed with a mid-foot sprain, a similar injury to what Joe Mixon is currently going through. Now, this isn't good for Carson owners. This injury sometimes requires surgery, although it does appear Carson will be avoiding the surgery for the time being. He still may miss anywhere between 2 to 4 or even 5 weeks. I'm hopeful that he will return sooner rather than later, but for the time being, grab Hyde, because he looked just fine when he replaced Carson, and he's going to be playing alongside MVP Russell Wilson. He's startable each week Carson misses. Pick him up in all shallow and deep leagues. Next up, Wayne Gallman Jr. Devontae Freeman left the game this weekend with an ankle injury. Gallman looked great in his replacement. He looked explosive and was inviting contact. He ended Week 7 with 54 total yards, 5 catches, and a rushing TD. The Giants leaned on Gallman after Dion fumbled, and it could easily be a similar game plan in the coming weeks. Gallman is a solid add in 12 and 14-team leagues. Another highly owned running back, J.K. Dobbins, but following close behind is his teammate Gus Bus Edwards. Fortunately for Mark Ingram, the Ravens had a Week 7 bye. Unfortunately for Mark Ingram, he's battling a high ankle sprain, an injury that can keep a player out anywhere from 2 to 7 weeks. It's unclear what the severity of the injury is, but Lamar is looking like he has put that knee injury behind him, and that's making for more running room for his running backs. The Ravens do face the Steelers in Week 8, but matchups against the Colts and Patriots could be good plug-and-plays for either J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards. Coming up next to our wide receivers, starting us off is Sterling Shepard. Now, the Giants' schedule to begin the year was rough. We warned people to not draft Daniel Jones for the simple fact that the Giants opened the season against Pittsburgh, Chicago, San Francisco, and the LA Rams. That's 4 of the best defenses in football that continually pressure the quarterback. Targeted 8 times in his first game back, Sterling now has a 4-game stretch from weeks 12 to 15 of the Bengals, Seahawks, Cardinals, and Browns. If you're looking for a wide receiver to lean on in the fantasy playoffs, Sterling might just be your man. Corey Davis. Whether A.J. Brown has or hasn't played, Davis has remained consistent throughout the season. Davis has played in 4 of the Titans' 6 games this season, and this has been his fantasy outputs. 13.6, 11.1, 9.4, and 12.5. That's exactly what you want from a flex receiver that you can possibly grab off waivers. The guy's a consistent 10 points a week. There's very few receivers in the league that are doing this. And that Titans offense is rolling. He's a great add in all leagues and formats. Now, Rashard Higgins. He balled out with Odell leaving the game. Poor guy tore his ACL. Best wishes out to Odell. Hope he has a speedy recovery. But Higgins already had back-to-back games with his receiving touchdown, and it's typically not advised to add a guy with just 6 targets on the season. But this week, Higgins caught all 6 balls for a career-high 110 yards. Landry just hasn't looked like himself this season. That hip injury is clearly nagging him, and the Browns are going to have to throw to somebody. I'm still not a fan of Baker, but maybe last week's performance over the Bengals carries over to next week. Higgins is a speculative add in 12-team leagues and a pretty decent add in 14-team leagues. Jalen Reagor. The hyped rookie out of TCU is reportedly ahead of schedule in regards to his UCL thumb injury and has been activated off the IR. Fulgham has cemented his role in this offense with his fantastic play as of late, but with Ertz, Sanders, Deshaun Jackson, and Alshon all battling injuries, Wentz can use all the support he can get. Q Reagor, who's definitely worth a stash in 12 and 14-team leagues and could provide quite valuable down the stretch for both the Eagles and your fantasy teams. Brandon Ayuk. Debo re-aggravated his hammy injury again. Look for him to miss 2 to 4 weeks. The Niners are just dropping like flies, but they still put up points. If Ayuk is still available, acquire him off your waivers as he could prove valuable in these next 2 potentially high-scoring matchups against the Seahawks and the Packers. Jalen Guyton. The biggest flyer you can possibly get on waivers. He's literally put on the field to beat people on the deep ball. He's only been targeted 13 times on the season, but he's come down with TD catches in 3 of them, and he scored long TDs in 2 of the past 4 weeks. The ultimate go big or go home play. This speedster should only be considered as a desperation play in 14-team leagues or bigger. Closing out here with our tight ends is Richard Rodgers. Now that's our only tight end to cover this week. Ertz and Goddard shouldn't be playing in week 8, and the Eagles are going against the scoring funnel that is the Dallas defense. Therefore, you can start Richard Rodgers. It's that easy. That'll do it for this week, fantasy friends. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, for all things fantasy football, subscribe to Fantasy Friend Zone and follow us on Twitter.